Welcome to the Entrepreneurial CEO Podcast, where we dive into the real stories behind building and scaling a business. Each episode, we sit down with CEOs, founders, and leaders to uncover hard-won lessons in leadership, systems, and team building. Listen in each week to learn directly from real business leaders who have been in your shoes, had success, made the mistakes, and all of the messiness that comes with building a business. If you're ready to learn from real-world leaders and gain insights you can apply today, you're in the right place. So let's get started. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Ryan, thanks for being here, man.
Absolutely, man. Looking forward to it.
All right. Everybody, today we have Ryan Flower, the SVP of Consulting at MAP Consulting. And today, Ryan's joining us to continue the conversation about Gettle and a little bit about the 1,000-day plan. And beyond that, Ryan has a lot of experience working with many clients here at MAP, but in particular, working with Gettle. So we're going to pick his brain. We're going to learn more about his experience there, and excited to learn more. All right. So the first question, Ryan, is when you stepped in to support Gettle after Steve's transition, Steve Behunin, we already talked to him. What was your initial impression of the company's systems, their leadership, and the culture there?
Yeah, I mean, when you first come into that Gettle verse, it's always Ken, right? And he was always pushing that team, the broader organization, which was really great to see. But the thing that I think I was most impressed, even appreciated, was how hungry the rest of that team was, right? I mean, those goals that they were setting each month in their VFTs, I mean, they were really, really getting after it with a lot of purpose and passion. And, that was the discipline and drive that I think was really a core part of their culture. And that's really, the MAP management system, right? Fully supporting that. So yeah, that was really impressive to see right away.
I've seen that with some of your other clients too, where they set ambitious, hungry goals. So I'm sure you're leading that. With Goettl, how did you approach continuing that momentum of the 1,000-day plan while also evolving the leadership team to operate when you're not there?
Yeah, it was key. I mean, we had a cadence. Each quarter we got together. The whole leadership team came to Vegas, and we treated it like a VFT meeting, but we always made the 1,000-day plan a big piece of that conversation, making sure that it was top of mind, that people were accountable, delivering the required results. And, it was the perfect vehicle. I mean, again, Ken was always driving it. He did a great job leveraging MAP and the system. And it was really the heart of those VFTs was that 1,000-day plan review. And so, it just kept us focused and aligned and accountable to what needed to get done. And so, when you had that quarterly check-in, the team knew what they needed to do in between those meetings. I mean, every week, every month, they're working that plan, hitting those goals. It was always really top of mind. And I think that's really the key of why I think it was so successful.
When I hear that, and it's funny, man, because Steve said something similar. I feel like it's just the loud message to the people listening, or maybe other CEOs, like it starts with you. Like you have to set that tone as the leader and the CEO, and the system works, but you have to be leading that charge, right? As the CEO and the leader. Yeah,
I think it's key, right? I think that's the sort of duality of it, right? First piece is exactly what you said, right? You as the leader, as the CEO, you got to drive it, right? You got to keep people excited, passionate, ultimately accountable. But there's also that element of the MAP system that, that's the other component that's really critical, right? Everybody's got those monthly goals that are laddering up to those, quarterly deliverables that are ultimately the annual objectives, right? And that's the key, right? When it's just the leader, I think that's what's missing, and vice versa, right? You may have a good system, but maybe as a CEO, you're not passionately driving that, right? You're not keeping that front of mind or top of mind for folks. And so you're really needing both, because then you've got that energy behind it as a leader, but then you've got the system that's really keeping people accountable to the results.
Yep. And I've seen when you have one but not the other, or vice versa, and it really it's not as powerful. So yeah, you hit it. Yep. So what did you see as the next level challenges that Gettle faced at that stage? Like how did MAP help the team keep going, keep adapting and growing past them?
Yeah, I mean, they were obviously growing at a fast pace, and we've all either been in high growth organizations or, again, as a MAP consultant, work with high growth organizations. And, sometimes that growth just starts to outpace the people and the processes, right? So they're not maturing at the same pace. And when that starts to happen, when that growth gets ahead of the maturity of those people and processes, they start to struggle, right? Things start to break down. You start to see gaps. But, again, Gettle really did a great job. Every 6 months, twice a year, they were bringing in those managers, newly promoted managers and leaders, and they were putting them in, our 2-day workshop, MAP Accelerator workshop. And that was where those folks got the skills that they needed to better manage that growth. And because of that, that was why I think they had such a great, or did a great job staying on that pace, staying in that space where they could continue to be successful. As those newly promoted managers and leaders, they had the skills that they needed. So often these managers get promoted, they don't have that, right? They just say, hey, you're a great individual contributor. Let's go make you a manager. And then those people struggle, and then the business starts to struggle. Not at Gettle. Those folks got the tools and the training that they needed to really be successful and continue on that growth trajectory.
Let's double click on that for a second. Give me an example for people. I mean, I know I went to the workshop, but for people that listening that don't know, what is it that the Gettle team learned that helped them to come back and be so much more effective and perform at a higher level?
Yeah. I mean, again, when you go to the workshop, you're really getting, 2 key pillars of MAP, right? First pillar is the system, right? So, giving them a framework that they can lean into and leverage as a manager and a leader. But you're also getting, in the second pillar is really the development piece, right? Those 6 functions of management. And, that's really where a lot of managers struggle. They just don't have the tools to be, good communicators. They don't have, the tools or the skills to have those performance management conversations. They're not aligning their resources effectively, the goals that they need to choose or that they've chosen. And that's really critical, right? You need to give managers those tools and that training. Because, again, just a system isn't enough, right? If you just had a system in place, yeah, you'd be doing better than others. But giving managers the tools to really reinforce the needed skills and that system, that's really the power of MAP. And Gettle got that. That's why they knew that was such a critical investment. And so, managers had the skills and the training that they needed to do the work that is required to, again, manage high growth.
And what were, MAP with vital factors, what were the vital factors or the metrics or KPIs that became most important during your time with them? And how did was there any way that they uniquely aligned around those?
Yeah, the thing that was really interesting, and I came in, you'd mentioned Steve Behanan, so I followed Steve. And what I was really interested in, Gettle had a little different structure. They were really focused mainly on 3 metrics, 3 vital factors. That was net revenue, gross profit, and EBITDA. And I was impressed that they really had the leadership level, focused and pared down to really those main 3. Beyond that, at the department level, branch level, they definitely dove deeper. I mean, they were looking at, everything that you would expect, right? Labor, material costs, equipment costs, cancellation percentage, callbacks, those productivity and quality metrics. They were diving deeper at that branch or department level. But when you were in that leadership level VFT, it was really about, those 3 things. I mean, again, we looked at other things, but, to keep a team really zeroed in on net revenue, gross profit, and EBITDA, that was critical. And, Ken put in the book, 50, 30, 20, right? E-Myth, right? That was always Ken's big reference, right? And so if you had gross profit at 50%, operating expenses at 30, and then 20% was left at EBITDA, that was success. And that team, boy, I tell you, they were as focused as any as I've seen around really hitting those components. And I think that was such a big reason why their EBITDA levels always came in, higher than a lot of the other HVAC companies that I saw at that time.
That's pretty impressive to be so maniacally focused on just those 3. I mean, I know that with us, we always tracked way more, right?
Yeah.
We always had to pare it down and optimize. We were tracking as few as possible, but it wasn't 3. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's why it was so impressive, when I came in, and again, they had other vital factors underneath those, but that was really prominently highlighted and displayed. And I think it's a case study in, if you can narrow down that focus, again, those are the main three. There's a few underneath it. Again, they were looking at other stuff, but the main three really got the additional attention. And I think it was really smart of Ken to do that and Steve to do that, because I think it really did keep the team laser focused where they needed to be.
Hi, if you're a CEO out there who's struggling with focus for your company, aligning your team, accountability, if you're struggling with execution, connecting the dots from where you're at to where you want to be, we've got a great program for you here at MAP. My name is Michael Goettl. I'm the CEO. Most importantly, I was a client for 15 years, sold my company to a public company, and then bought MAP so that we can help other entrepreneurs with this specific problem. We're a 60-year-old company. We've worked with 170,000 individual executives and CEOs. We've worked with 15,000 organizations. This is what we do. Click the link below to learn a little bit more about how people just like you, CEOs, have transformed their business and ultimately transformed their life by running through the MAP system.
And, they had already, when you stepped in, they had already embraced MAP pretty deeply. I mean, we know that story from Ken. What did that look like to you day to day? Maybe you can contrast that too to other clients or that they've worked with or started with. What did that look like?
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm always impressed by and looking for is, seeing that full implementation, right? So when I took over in 2021, we were already starting to push into the branches and the departments. Again, sometimes MAP just sits at that leadership level, and that's great. That's important. That's valuable. But if you can start to get into that, next level of leadership management, right? That's really critical. We have these three phases at MAP, right? Level 1, level 2, level 3 clients, right? And level 1 is the mechanics phase. We know that that's hard. It's new. People are doing new things. Sometimes it doesn't work and people want to give up. That's just natural human behavior. But if you can get through that phase and get to phase 2, that's the enlightenment phase. People start to get what this is doing. They start to even appreciate how this MAP system is really helping them. This MAP training is helping them. And then you get to level 3, that's internalization. That's just when MAP becomes part of your culture, part of your core. And again, everybody's operating in that space, right? People are setting goals and they're just not putting them on paper. They're getting after them, right? And they're holding each other accountable to that work and those results. And when you see a client get there, it's super impressive. And Gettle definitely did that, further pushing that down, not just keeping at the leadership level, getting deeper into those departments and branches. It was a really great thing to see.
That's awesome. We talk about the two pillars of the MAP, the system, and then the workshop and the development of leaders. When you came in, how did you help support the continued development of that leadership team and of the leaders there?
Yeah, one thing that Steve and Ken talked about early, and Ken, continued certainly when I got involved, is, he always made sure, in addition to the workshops and making sure managers and leaders were getting the important 6 functions training, he always really valued one-to-one coaching, taking those high performers, high potential managers and leaders and giving them the extra development and support that they needed to really become the future leaders, the next level leaders, as Ken would call them. To me, that was always really great to see. When I see leaders value that investment, even make that investment in those high potential folks, I just think it really reinforces, how they understand the value of their people and what they're doing to continuously cultivate that talent. And again, Ken and Gettle certainly did that.
I mean, those guys were high performers, high achievers. What did accountability look like inside Gettle when you started working with them or throughout? And I'm also curious what the monthly cadence of MAP, what impact that had. A lot of other companies will have like a quarterly cadence or something a little, longer. So I'm curious what accountability looked like, and then what the monthly cadence, how that impacted it.
Yeah, monthly is key. That's why, and again, we had, quarterly check-ins with the leadership team on that 1,000-day plan. But, the monthly cadence of VFT meetings, happening throughout the organization. Again, that's what it took to get to that level 3 status as a client. And, they just, every month they were coming in, again, setting great goals, holding each other accountable, even competing with each other. Again, we talk about competition, sometimes it's not healthy, but they were an organization that was, really engaging in that healthy competition. Everybody wanted to win organizationally, but also, they wanted to be the top guy, right, in that team or, in that branch or that division. And, again, it was just so great to see. I mean, that's why at MAP we talk about, discipline and accountability and achievement, right? And I actually think of it as an equation, right? Discipline plus accountability equals achievement. And they were really showing up every month in that monthly VFT with the discipline and the accountability that they knew was going to drive the achievement of their goals. And again, they were great at that. Gettle did such a tremendous job really cultivating that and reinforcing that MAP system on those monthly VFTs and on that monthly cadence. And I think it's a big reason why accountability was at such a high level for them.
I like that equation. I haven't heard somebody use that before. I like that though, because it's like you can be tracking, you can have a process and a system to track stuff, but unless you're doing something with it, unless you're holding each other accountable and having those hard conversations about, whether it's a team consult or something else to problem solve, you're not going to move the needle. So I like that equation.
Exactly. Well, and that's the discipline piece. You mentioned, and you're so right. It's accountability. Yeah. Other organizations, they've got goals, they've got them on paper, right? They're going to say they've got accountability. And in some cases that might be true. The discipline is, how do you make that the vital few, right? How do you make that the main thing, right? People are chasing all the time, right? Everybody's got, like you said, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 vital factors, right? They're chasing every little opportunity down. Not a Gettle. I mean, that was the discipline. It was like, hey guys, listen, we've got our main things, right? We know what we need to do. Net revenue, gross margin, EBITDA, right? That's the main things, right? And so if they drifted, and every organization is going to drift a little bit, but they had the discipline to say, hey, wait a minute, let's get back to the main things, right? We've got our goals. That's our vital few. Let's get back to that. And that's the discipline. When you put that together with accountability, that's when you see the achievement of those goals show up on a more consistent basis. And so, that's why I always say that equation, because I think that that's really critical and important for clients to deliver.
And to me, I think that's one of the values that an experienced senior consultant can bring to the table is, hey guys, we're drifting here. Yeah. How is this aligned with the strategic priorities or the initiatives that we had set or the vital factors? It's not great, then we shouldn't be talking about it. And that's the value of that senior consultant, to pull it back in.
Yeah. It's super helpful to have that perspective. And, like I said, all organizations are going to drift, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get there, right? We see that opportunity. We think it's big. We want to chase. But you're so right. It's helpful to have, an experienced senior consultant, right? We've been there. We've done that. We've been in those situations. We've made some of those mistakes ourselves, right? And so we know what it takes to bring that discipline back. And again, Ken was great about supporting that and reinforcing that. And so, I think that's a huge reason why having the system in place, but also having a senior consultant to, help keep that system running at a high level is critical.
So you were there during that amazing growth over multiple years. In your view, what were some of the biggest contributors to that growth and the trajectory during the phase?
Yeah, when I look back on my experience with Gettle, it was, it was always really two things. Again, that MAP system running on a monthly basis, again, level 3 client, just really disciplined, fully implemented. They had all of it, but the 1,000-day plan was the other piece that, I think more organizations should do. I mean, it's kind of a nice time, right? Roughly 3 years, but again, it was always something on a quarterly basis. We never let it, sometimes even on a monthly basis at VFTs, we never let it get too far out of sight, out of mind. And, again, we've all done strategic planning. We all know sometimes those plans become, a little bit of an out of sight, out of mind deal, right? But not a Gettle. That 1,000-day plan was always something that we circle back to. And so, having a system like MAP and a really good plan, 1,000-day plan like Gettle had, it just kept everybody rowing in the same direction. It kept us in that cadence that we needed to, again, really make sure we were on track. And, the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. So at MAP, we talk a lot about taking vision, that plan, into execution, right? Actually getting it done. What do you think made Gettle so effective at the execution of that plan? I'm sure lots of people have plans, but they execute it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's that discipline and accountability. But, I would say you really see it with clients, and it really shows up when goals are missed, right? Again, everybody's going to miss some goals, right? Sometimes, unfortunately, organizations are probably missing more than they want. But again, even good high-performing organizations, if they're setting good goals, they're reaching a little bit, they're going to miss some. Where I really know if I've got a client that's really running MAP at a high level, that's really internalized it, that has that discipline and accountability, when those goals get missed, they've immediately got corrective action plans in place. So I'm coming into the VFT, I see this goal's been missed, and I go through those goals with those individuals, and I immediately hear they're like, hey, missed the goal, not achieved, I'm rolling it forward next month, here's my corrective action plan, and they run through that plan. That was Gettle. They knew when they missed a goal, when a goal was marked as not achieved, they had to come in with a plan and be prepared to speak to that, right? Not just tell us the numbers that they missed, but what were they going to do in the next 30 days to get back on track? That's how they course corrected quickly. That's how they got back to plan. And when you see a level 3 client, or just a client that's running the MAP management system at a high level, that's how you really know it's internalized, is when you see those missed goals start to have corrective action plans, because if they're good plans, they're going to hit that goal the next month. And boy, that's really satisfying. When you miss a goal one month and then you come back the next month. Yeah. Man, that's great stuff, right? That's how you know a team that's going to stay on track and stay to plan. And that was certainly what I saw at Gettle.
Taking ownership. Yep. So there's a lot of people that aspire to have the same success that Gettle had. If you were talking to one of them that, wanted to get to a high level, based on your time, what would you tell them to do?
Yeah, it's funny. I had an experience. I was at a trade show with Ken one year, and this was literally his pitch, his spiel, if you will. And I just said, this is exactly what I would say too. So he's talking to this prospective client, and Ken tells him, get your team into that accelerated workshop, get that MAP management system implemented, and from there it's off to the races, right? And so I would say the same thing, right? Let's get to work, right? You know what to do. First step is that accelerated workshop. You're going to implement the MAP management system and get those VFT meetings running. And again, you're going to see in a few months, you're going to start to see the impact, and it's off to the races from there. So that is definitely the same advice that I would give anybody that's interested.
Love it. Well, thank you, man. This has been great. We really appreciate your time. It's always inspirational and exciting to learn about, just that path, right? Working with Gettle, and they had amazing success, and MAP played such a huge role in it. So yeah, thank you for sharing.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. We will see you next time.